Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new video. Tonight we have 4 stories coming out to just a little bit over 2 hours as per usual. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's go for 1400 likes on this one. I think if everybody took a quick second we could do it. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated, as I post content just like this all of the time. Enjoy the video, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. I will never forget the day I found out I was pregnant. We had been trying for years and thought it was never going to happen. So when the second line showed up on that pregnancy test, I couldn't believe my eyes. I even made my husband run out and buy 2 more just to make sure. All 3 came out positive. Finally, this was the last piece in our puzzle we were waiting for. It was like a dream come true. We were already married and living in our dream home with a big back garden that was perfect for adventurous kids. In the middle of the garden there was an old oak tree that they could climb. One of the first things we did was put up a tire swing on it. We knew it would be years before he would be able to use it, but with the thoughts of a little one running around, we just couldn't wait. We had to do something. My husband was like a big kid himself. He wouldn't shut up about all the adventures he was going to take him on, even though I explained to him repeatedly that it would be a few years before the baby would be able to do things like that. I think he was happy to finally have someone to play with and forgot about the baby stage. Until Harry arrived. Don't get me wrong. He was a good husband and dad. He did a lot for me during the pregnancy. When Harry was born, I needed an emergency C-section and there were complications. It took a while to recover from it. So, for the first few months after Harry came home, Dan did nearly everything for him, from night feeds to changing diapers, which must have been hard. He's one of the most impatient people I know, so it was a bit of a challenge. It took a little bit of time for us both to adjust, I suppose. There were plenty of stressful days and sleepless nights too, but when I was back on my feet, we managed to get into our own rhythm. After that, everything went smoothly for us. Well, as smooth as it can with a new baby in the house, I mean. I think he was almost 3 months old when I first noticed something odd. I was holding him in my arms while feeding him and staring into his beautiful blue eyes as usual, when suddenly he stopped feeding and started staring at me with this strange look in his eyes, kind of like he was angry with me. I assumed it was just gas and put him on my shoulder to burp him. What happened next, I swear to you, is true. I was rubbing his back when he moved suddenly and slipped off my shoulder. Luckily, I caught him before he fell, but unfortunately, I pinched him with my nails in the process. He didn't cry or anything. He just made a growling noise. I gave him a hug and a kiss before putting him back up on my shoulder. A few seconds later, I heard him whisper something in my ear. It sounded like cunt. I just laughed. It had to be one of his little baby noises, I thought, and continued rubbing his back. Not long after that, I heard it again. Cunt. This time it was loud and clear. I put him sitting on my knee and repeated, "Did you say a bad word, cutie? Did you? Did you?" Jokingly in my usual silly voice. He stared into my eyes without breaking eye contact or even blinking with a strange look I had not seen before for about 5 minutes. I thought he might still have had some gas. So I put him back up on my shoulder and started rubbing his back with my hand. He started pushing his head closer and closer to my face until he was near my ear. Then suddenly he grabbed onto one of my earrings with his mouth and started shaking his head. I tried to pull him away, but he would not let go. It was so painful. I thought he was going to rip it off my ear, but luckily, I managed to open it before he got the chance. When I put him sitting back down on my knee, he spit it out and hit me on the side of the face, then smirked at me with this creepy grin. At the time, I thought it was just one big coincidence. I could never imagine he could have hurt anyone on purpose. How could I? He was only a baby. When my husband got home, I told him what had happened, and we both had a good laugh about it. But I never wore earrings around him again. The rest of that night was uneventful. It was my husband's turn to get up with him. So, it was the next morning after my husband went to work before I was alone with Harry again. It was also the last day of my parental leave, so I was going to try to make the most of it and bring him to the park. He loved looking at the ducks. Before I left, I decided to change his diaper. He was not happy about it. When I tried to undress him, he kept kicking me unusually hard. I didn't know what was wrong with him. I had never seen him like that before. When I finally got him fully dressed, he gave me the finger. I know what you think. Just baby stuff. Well, that's what I thought at the time. Even though he looked into my eyes while grinding his, I would say teeth, but he didn't have any. For the rest of that day, he did not look at me once, not even when I fed him. That night, it was my turn to get up and feed him, but I had trouble sleeping. I think I was just stressed with the thoughts of going back to work after that long break. I was just lying there when I heard something on the baby monitor. It sounded like someone muttering to themselves. I thought maybe our lines got crossed and we were picking up someone else's monitor, but I got up and checked on him to make sure. I snuck quietly down the hallway, so not to wake him, and looked through the crack in the partially open door. I was shocked with what I saw. He was sitting up looking around. I was amazed. He was not supposed to be able to do that for another few months, so I ran up and got my phone to record him. On my way back down, he screamed and frightened me. It was so loud I thought there must have been something seriously wrong with him. When I got there, I found him lying on the floor just inside the door. He had made so much noise he woke my husband. He found me standing over Harry and thought I had dropped him. I tried to tell him I found him like that, but he just would not believe me. When my husband put him up on his shoulder to console him, Harry smiled over at me with, I know this sounds weird to say about a baby, but with a smug look on his face. After that, things went downhill for me. It seemed like any time I was near him, there were problems. From screaming when I touched him when my husband was around to pinching, scraping, or throwing things at me when we were alone. I'm sure my husband thought I was hurting Harry on purpose. He didn't say it to me, but he was always looking over my shoulder anytime I was near the baby. I tried my best to improve my relationship with him, but it was hard. I worked long hours, and he was usually in bed when I got home. The only time I got to spend with him was on the weekends. Even then, it might only be for a few hours, and I practically spent no time alone with him. Eventually, I felt like I had no choice but to take a step back from my responsibilities at work, which meant a demotion and a sufficient salary reduction. But at least I would get home at a reasonable hour. My husband was very supportive of my decision. He said he was just happy we would be able to spend more time together, which was nice to hear. For the first few weeks, everything couldn't have gone better. We were finally able to do things as a family. I even started to believe Harry was starting to warm up to me. He still looked like he was disgusted by me and tried to avoid eye contact, but at least he wasn't acting out when I was near him anymore. Things were going good until a few weeks ago. My husband bought a new baby monitor with a camera. The other one mysteriously disappeared one night after putting Harry to bed. I really liked it. I was able to watch him sleep and got into the habit of watching the monitor every night before I fell asleep. Somehow, I think he knew, and he didn't like it. He started sitting up on his cot staring into the camera until I fell asleep. Anytime I tried to show my husband what he was doing, Harry would just fall back and pretend he was asleep before he got a chance to see him. The more I watched, the more it started to creep me out. It was like he could see me. I often dozed off. When I woke, I would see him scanning the room as if he were looking for something. Then he would quickly turn to the camera again and stare at me until I fell asleep. I always thought mine and Harry's problems were caused by us not bonding properly when we came home from the hospital. All of the weird things that happened were just in my head, but I was wrong. Last night, I woke to the sound of Harry laughing. When I checked the monitor, he wasn't in his cot. I tried to call my husband, but no matter what I did, he wouldn't wake up. I ran down and checked every part of his room, but he wasn't there. I was really beginning to worry at this stage. I was ready to call the police when I thought I heard a noise downstairs, but he wasn't there. So I ran back up in a panic to get my phone. Then I heard what sounded like mumbling. It seemed like it was coming from my room. When I opened the door, I was horrified with what I saw. Harry was sitting on my husband's chest with his hands over his mouth, chanting. My husband's legs were shaking, and he was struggling to breathe. I panicked and pushed Harry onto the bed and started doing CPR. The whole time Harry laughed hysterically. For nearly 10 minutes, I did everything I could to save him, but nothing I did was working. I thought he was going to die. I was so scared. By the time the paramedics got there, he had stopped moving altogether. They got to work on him straight away and found a pacifier wedged deep in his throat. Luckily, they got it out just in time. They said if I didn't do CPR, he wouldn't have made it. Thank God he is going to be okay. But he will be kept in for a few days. The problem is, now I am stuck at home with Harry, and I am afraid of what he will do to me. After they took him to the ER, I rang my mom and told her my husband was in hospital. She came straight over. I thought about telling her the truth, but I was afraid she wouldn't believe me. When she asked how it happened, I didn't know how to answer. How could I explain to her that her 6-month-old grandson got out of his cot in the middle of the night, snuck into our room, climbed onto the bed, then shoved a pacifier down my husband's throat? She definitely would have thought I lost my mind and blamed me for everything. At that stage, I was starting to have doubts about it myself. I thought maybe I was going insane. To be honest, I would prefer that. At least I would be able to get some help. In the end, it was just easier to tell her that he was lying down with Harry on his chest and the pacifier fell into his mouth. I rushed out the door before she asked any more questions. When I got to the hospital, they wouldn't let me see him. They said that he was still unconscious, and they were worried he might have some brain damage from lack of oxygen. So they needed to do some tests. That was the longest night of my life. I spent the whole time pacing up and down the corridors. The next morning, they told me everything had come back, and they could not find anything wrong with him, apart from some slight damage to his throat, which was positive, but they didn't know for sure until he woke up. When they finally let me see him, I cried. There were tubes coming out of everywhere. His throat was purple and swollen to twice its normal size. I stayed with him as long as I could. Mostly because I was too scared to go home and face Harry. That night, I had no choice. I needed clothes and hadn't slept in 2 days. Luckily, my mom offered to stay with me for the night. At least I wouldn't be on my own. When I got home, I was relieved that Harry was in bed. I didn't have to face him. I know how crazy I sound, but I genuinely feared my baby. Unfortunately, Mom wasn't able to take care of Harry the next day, but she did organize a babysitter, which was not easy since it was the weekend. I woke up to my mom handing me a cup of coffee. She said she had to go, and she would check in later. After I walked her out, I went to the kitchen where Harry was sitting in his high chair with his breakfast in front of him. He watched me the whole time with a concerned look on his face. It was so weird. I think he was surprised I came back. At 12 o'clock, the babysitter came. I was happy to get out of there. It's not easy acting normal around him after what he did. As quickly as I could, I left and went to visit my husband. The nurse said there was no real change, and he was still unconscious. I stayed with him all day. It was torture seeing him like that, but at least I didn't have to go home. Not until that night, anyway. I had asked Jean, the babysitter, to have him in bed by 8:30. I came home at 10 to make sure he was asleep, but before I opened the door, I could hear him crying. To tell you the truth, I felt like turning around and walking away, never to return, but I couldn't. Whatever he is, or whatever he did, he was still my child and I loved him. When I went inside, he stopped and smiled over at me, which was very weird. Not because it was creepy or angry like usual. No, because it looked genuine. I don't think he ever smiled at me like that before. I was confused and a little freaked out. Jean told me he tried to put him to bed before, but he kept on crying. She said he must have missed his mommy because he stopped when he saw me, which worried me. After she left, I put him to bed. Again, he just stared at me with amazement. I watched him on the monitor for a while. That was the first time I saw him lying down like that since before this all started. I got up 11 or 10 times that night to check on him, but he was asleep every time. The next morning the same thing happened. It was strange. He was acting like a normal baby. I thought everything was going well until I came home the next day because of a phone call from Jean. She was crying so much when she rang, so I left the hospital immediately. When I got there, she was standing outside. She was crying so much I couldn't understand her. I thought something had happened to Harry and ran inside, but he was sitting in the middle of the floor smiling. When I went back out, she was gone. I tried to ring her, but there was no answer. So I tried the agency she worked for and told them what happened. They said they would get back to me as soon as they could. I was worried. I thought maybe Harry hurt her like he did my husband. I kept a close eye on him for the rest of that night, but he was acting normal. Well, normal for Harry, apart from the fact that he was still watching everything I did. Jean was supposed to be there at 8 the next morning. I tried ringing her, but her phone was off. So again, I phoned the agency. As soon as I said my name, I knew there was something wrong because the girl panicked and asked me to hold. An hour later, I was still on hold, so I decided to hang up and ring again. This time they hung up straight away. I became impatient and wouldn't give up. So I kept ringing and ringing until finally, a man with a deep voice came on the phone. He said, "I am very sorry, Mrs., but because of unforeseen circumstances, we will be unable to do business with you anymore. We are sorry for any inconvenience. We will give you a full refund for everything you paid for our services. Now please do not ring here again." Then he just hung up. What does that even mean? I tried to ring back and ask him what happened, but I'm sure they blocked my number because it wouldn't even ring. I spent most of that day trying to find a replacement. When I finally did, they said they couldn't come out until the following morning. It wasn't all bad. I got a call from the hospital that night. They said my husband was awake. I was so happy. I wanted to go see him there and then, but it was too late. I couldn't sleep that night. I was too excited to see my husband. The next morning, as soon as the babysitter Lucy arrived, I was gone out the door. I really missed talking to him and couldn't wait to tell him how much I loved him. I don't know what I would have done if he didn't make it. When I got near his room, a nurse came up to me and said he didn't want to see me. I was heartbroken. I begged her to let me in for even a minute, but she said she couldn't without his permission. I had no choice but to go home. I cried all night. I was sure my marriage was over. I didn't say anything about it around Harry, but I think he knew there was something up, because he started standing up watching the camera that night. I went back to the hospital the next day. I thought if I just got to talk to him, I could explain what happened and it would fix everything, but he refused to see me. I hung around all that day in the hospital hoping he might change his mind, which gave me a lot of time to think. I realized he must have thought it was me who shoved the pacifier down his throat. The doctor said it was pushed down with a lot of force. There was no way he would believe it was Harry. If I got talking to him and blamed the baby, I would risk losing them both. Then again, I didn't even know what he remembered. Maybe he remembered everything and was afraid of Harry. If so, would I have to choose between my husband and my baby? This is all so crazy. When visiting hours ended, they asked me to leave. Before I left, I begged them to ring me straight away if he changed his mind. They said they would, but I'm sure they were just trying to get rid of me. When I got home, Lucy told me Harry was acting up all day. He hit her across the nose with his bottle when she tried to feed him, and it was still bleeding when I got there. He also pulled 2 handfuls of hair out of her head, and she had a bald patch. She was really upset over it, but what could I say? Only, I'm sorry. Harry was okay for me that night. He went to bed with no problems and slept all night, which was a relief. The next morning I called my mom to look after Harry, as it was Lucy's day off. I never told her he refused to see me. I just said I was going to visit him. I was too embarrassed to tell her the truth. Then I just rushed out the door and went back to the hospital. I waited there all day again in hopes he might see me. I think the nurses were starting to feel sorry for me. They kept coming over asking if I was okay. I told them all I wanted was to see my husband. I'm not sure if it was because of them or not, but later that day one of the nurses told me he wanted to see me. I broke down in tears. I was so happy. When I got in there, he was sitting up on the bed. He looked nervous. To be honest, so was I. I had no idea what to say to him and was terrified about what he was going to say to me. I sat down quietly on a chair at the edge of his bed and waited for him to speak. For a moment he stared blankly out the window. Then he started to speak softly in a hoarse voice. I love you, and I don't want us to end like this. And I don't blame you for what happened. As he paused to get a drink of water and cleared his throat, I was sure he had remembered what had happened and knew what Harry did, which was a bit of a relief. Someone would finally believe me. He continued, You need help. I know that now. It's my fault. I knew you were having problems for a while and I ignored it. Even when you were getting hallucinations. I am truly sorry for that, and I promise I will be there for you however long it takes for you to get better. I didn't know how to react or what to say. I was happy he still loved me and wanted to stay, but I was confused and a little concerned about what he wanted me to do. He said he wanted me to see a doctor straight away, to find out what's wrong with me. When I asked him what he thought had happened, he told me the last thing he remembered he was in pain, and I was standing over him and he couldn't breathe. I wanted to tell him it wasn't me. I was only giving him CPR, but there was no point. There was no way he would have believed me. So I said nothing and let him believe it was me. I agreed with all his terms, at least that way I wouldn't lose him. That evening when I got home, my mom was in the kitchen. Harry was sitting in his high chair playing with his toy blocks. When I told her my husband would be coming home in a couple of days, Harry freaked out. He started throwing his blocks around the room, then grabbed his chair with both hands and started shaking it aggressively. He looked possessed. Even my mom was a bit scared. When she went over to try to calm him down, he screamed in her face, which frightened her, and she fell, spraining her elbow in the process. Then he stopped and went back to normal as if nothing happened. After my mom left, I put him to bed and called it a night myself. When I checked the monitor, Harry was standing up smiling at me. I just ignored him and went to sleep. Later, I was awoken by the sound of footsteps in the room, so I turned on the light and looked around. What I saw terrified me beyond comprehension. On my husband's pillow was one of Harry's pacifiers. I know I didn't leave it there. I checked the monitor. Harry was standing up. He smiled at me for a moment before he lay down and turned away. I was sure he was sending me a message. I stayed awake for the rest of that night trying to figure out what to do. In the end, I decided to try to bargain with him, so the next morning I gave him his favorite breakfast, then took him to the park. On the way home, I stopped to pick up some new toys. I thought if I was really nice to him, he would listen to me and not hurt my husband. When we got home, I put him in his chair, gave him a treat, and began to explain his dad would be home the following day. Then I begged him not to hurt him. I told him I would do anything if he just left him alone. He just looked down at his chocolate as if he was contemplating, before laughing hysterically while banging his hands on the table. This lasted about 5 minutes, then he suddenly stopped and started breathing extremely heavily through his nose with a look of pure hate on his face. Then he stopped, smiled, and began eating his chocolate as if nothing had happened. I am really worried about what he will do to my husband when he comes home, but there is nothing I can do about it. The morning before my husband came home, I was so nervous I kept pacing up and down the hallway waiting for Lucy to call. Harry didn't help. He was sitting in the sitting room on his swing. I could hear him humming this creepy tune the whole time. Whenever I checked in on him, he got excited and started kicking his legs, with his hands out for me to pick him up, but I couldn't even bear being in the same room with him, never mind holding him. The second Lucy arrived, I was gone out the door, even though it was only 8 a.m., and my husband wouldn't be discharged until noon. I got a coffee and sat in my car at the hospital car park to think before going in. I needed to figure out a way to protect my husband when he got home, but there was a million thoughts going through my head all at once, and nothing I thought of made any sense. I would need to be there the whole time with them to stop Harry, and that would be impossible. I was so lost in thought that I ended up being late. My husband was a little annoyed with me. He was sick of being in hospital and just wanted to get home. On the way back, I tried to talk to him into staying away from Harry. I told him he should take it easy until he was fully recovered. But he really missed him and wanted to spend as much time as he could with him after their time apart. As soon as he got home, he went straight over to Harry, picked him up, and started playing with him. The two of them looked so happy together. Harry was laughing and jumping around with excitement. It was hard to believe he would ever try and hurt his dad. Everything was going well, I thought, until he put him up on his shoulder as he went out to the kitchen. Harry started looking up and down at the bruises on his neck, as if to check out his handiwork. Then he grabbed onto his throat with both hands and squeezed while staring at me with that hateful look in his eyes. Even though the swelling had gone down a lot on my husband's neck, it was still extremely sensitive, so he screamed in pain. I jumped up immediately to try to stop him, but he wouldn't let go no matter what I did. Eventually I picked up one of his bottles, opened it, then threw it in his face and he let go. By then my husband was nearly in tears. I was expecting him to be some bit thankful. Instead he got angry with me for what I did to Harry. He said Harry was just a baby and couldn't have done it on purpose. I just agreed with him and apologized. What else could I do? He was one step away from getting me locked up in a mental hospital already, and if that happened, who would protect him from Harry? He had already made me an appointment for the following day with a psychiatrist, which I was not looking forward to. I had no idea what to say to them, and I knew if I told them the truth, I'd be locked up and they would throw away the key. That night was torture. Harry kept on crying. I think he was hoping my husband would go and check on him, but I had the sound turned off on the monitor so he couldn't hear. I stayed up all night watching the monitor to make sure Harry didn't leave his room. By morning, I was exhausted. When my husband saw me, he said I looked ill. so I used that to get out of going to the psychiatrist, but unfortunately, he made an appointment for the following day. I shadowed my husband all that day, which made him uncomfortable at times. He must have thought I didn't trust him with the baby. I told him I was just afraid Harry might hurt him again, which didn't go down well. I could see in his face he thought I had completely lost it. That night, when my husband went to sleep, I wedged the bedroom door closed with part of a picture frame so Harry couldn't get in, and I could get some sleep. I think Harry knew because he was going psycho in his cot. He even ripped one of the bars off and threw it at the camera. He looked so angry that I was afraid to go near him, so I put the monitor under the bed and went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, my husband wasn't beside me. I panicked and ran into Harry's room, but he wasn't there, so I ran downstairs. I was relieved when I found him in the kitchen eating breakfast. I was happy for a moment until he asked me about Harry's cot being broken and the bedroom door being wedged closed. I didn't really know how to answer without coming across even more crazy, so I played dumb and shook my head. He didn't say anything else about it, but I knew he was very worried about me by his expression. When it was time for my appointment, he made me get a taxi. I don't think he trusted me driving. I begged him to take me instead so that he wouldn't be home alone with Harry. He refused. He said he needed to spend some quality time with Harry, but I'm sure he thought I was hurting him and wanted to investigate while I was gone. When the taxi dropped me off outside the doctor's office, I suddenly got a really bad feeling there was something wrong and decided to go home. On the way back, I began to think about what if I was wrong and it was just nerves. If everything was okay, my husband would never have understood. When I got out of the taxi, I thought I heard screaming. I ran up to the door and tried to put the key in, but my husband swung the door open before I got the chance. He stared me in the eyes with a look of pure terror in his face. I didn't know what was wrong. I had never seen him like that. His whole body was trembling. He tried to speak 2 or 3 times, but all that came out was grunting noises. He ran away when he heard Harry crying. I tried to chase him, but he was too fast. When I called out to him, he stopped for a moment and turned around. I could see that he wanted to tell me something, but all that came out was another grunt. Then he disappeared around the corner. I probably should have been terrified to go back into that house, but I wasn't. I was just angry, really angry, so I stormed back in there, walked right up to Harry, who was sitting in the middle of the table at the time, picked him up and put him up against the wall and said, "What the fuck did you do, you little shit?" He could see by my expression that I meant business, and for the first time he genuinely looked worried. I continued, "You better hope your dad comes back or I am going to smother you with a pillow, you fucking asshole." Then I took him upstairs and put him to bed. My husband had left his phone at home, so I spent the rest of the day trying to ring around all his contacts to try to find him, but no one had seen him. By nightfall, I had calmed down enough to check on Harry. As much as a monster as he was still my son and I still had to look after him. I think he was still scared of me because when I handed him his bottle, he jumped back up against the other side of his cot. Before I went to bed, I tied the handle of the door to the banister that was across from it and wedged my bedroom door closed, as well just to make sure he didn't get in. Harry was very quiet that night. Anytime I looked at the monitor, he was lying down. I thought I must have finally got through to him. The next morning was the same thing. He wouldn't even look me in the eye, and anytime I went near him, he would put his head down. The first thing I did that morning was go shopping for new locks for Harry's door. I got 3 deadbolts and used my husband's drills to install them. I was sure there was no way he would get out after that. Harry was on his best behavior over the next couple of days, which was good, but I had still not heard anything from my husband. I thought he would have been back by then, Everything he had was here. The only family he had that he could stay with was his sister. She lived on the other side of town. I tried to ring her 3 or 4 times, but she wouldn't answer. So, when Lucy arrived, I drove over there to try to talk to her. When I got there, he was just getting into his sister's car. He was snow white, and his eyes were bloodshot like after he was crying. He didn't even look at me. He just sat in and turned away. At that moment, his sister came out and asked me what happened. She said he barely said a word since he arrived. I didn't even answer her. I just sat in beside him and said, "Please talk to me. You know you can tell me anything," as I put my hand on his leg. He broke down in tears instantly and mumbled, "I am begging you. Please don't make this any harder than it has to be. I am truly sorry, but I need to go far away from here where it can't find me." "What do you mean? What happened? Did he do something to you?" I said frantically. "Please don't go. We can get through this. We love each other." I tried to take his hand, but he pulled away. "Don't you see? It's too late for you. It will never let you go now," he said before he started screaming at the top of his lungs, "Get out!" over and over again until his sister dragged me out of the car and warned me to stay away. She obviously thought I did something to him. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there with my mouth open, trying to process what had just happened as they drove off. My husband was a very logical person. He wasn't the least bit religious. He believed there was always a scientific reason for everything, and laughed at me when I got scared watching horror movies. I didn't know why he was like that. Something must have really scared him, so I decided to go home to confront Harry and maybe get some answers. I knew he was afraid of me then. Plus, I was sure he needed me, and that was probably why he had stopped trying to hurt me. So I thought I had some leverage over him. I waited until Lucy was gone and I put Harry to bed before I made my move. I thought if something went wrong, I could run out of his room and lock him in before it was too late. I put him in his cot and said, "I met your dad today, and he told me what you did, you monster." His eyes opened wide. He looked taken aback by what I said. Then I shouted, "Answer me!" He jumped back, so I leaned in closer and whispered, "I am not afraid of you anymore." He turned away and started crawling into the corner of his cot. I could hear what sounded like sobbing. I started to feel bad for a moment. Then I heard it. That monstrous roar. It was so loud it knocked me over. When I stood up, I couldn't hear anything apart from ringing in my ears. Then, the cot fell over and I couldn't see Harry anymore. I ran out of there. As I was closing the door, I saw the cot coming flying towards me, which hit the door, knocking me back, and I nearly fell down the stairs. I jumped up as fast as I could and bolted his door shut, before going into my room and barricading my door with everything I could find. I thought about going to the police, but what would be the point? I would be blamed for everything, and he would be free to hurt whoever he chooses. Besides, what have I got to lose now? My husband's gone for good, and my only child is... I don't even know what he is. I think this may be my last post. He must have gotten out of his room. I can hear him outside my door right now. He is calling me by name in a voice that I feel is impossible to describe. Apart from saying it is not human, I don't know why, but the more he speaks, the less scared I feel. I think it's time to go now. Goodbye. I'd like to apologize for my recent outbursts and for blaming my petty, insignificant problems on my precious little boy Harry, especially when there are so many important things I should have been focused on. I can't believe how selfish I was. I should never have tried to hold him back. I blame society. It brainwashed me into believing just because Harry was different, there was something wrong with him, and I let that scare me. This caused him pain. I am still really angry with myself over that. I would have never been able to forgive myself if something had happened to him. Anyway, since when is being different a bad thing? I think people are just afraid of what they don't understand. Some might call him evil. What does that even mean? How many people died in the name of God? Is he evil? Good and evil is how you perceive it. Look at literally every war. Both sides will argue that their actions are just, yet none could be called innocent with the atrocities that happen in the battlefields. But that's just the world we live in. I will never again make the mistake of believing he is a monster. I was just oblivious to the truth back then, blinded by my own insecurities. I lived my life lost, unable to see the world for what it really was, like so many others until that special night. I am so grateful that he is so understanding. I don't think anyone else would have forgiven me so easily. Then again, I suppose there is no one else like him out there, which makes me feel so special for having the privilege of taking care of him. I will treasure that for an eternity. I will admit that night when he first opened up, I could not handle it and freaked out. It is a lot to take in for an inferior being like me. That's why most minds crack under the pressure, like that poor babysitter Jean. It was an awful pity. Harry really liked her, but you never know, our paths might cross again. Unlike her, once I got my head around it, it was as if a veil had been lifted. I could see everything, and it was spectacular. All my worries and fears melted away. I am not ashamed to say I cried. The pure scale and beauty of what he showed me was overwhelming. It was like a dream. How I wish I could live in that moment forever. Don't worry, you won't be forgotten. Everyone will get their chance eventually, which makes me so jealous. I wish I could go back and do it all over again. Well, anyways, the past is the past, and that's where we will leave it. But the future is much more brighter now thanks to my precious little Harry. I love him so much it hurts. I just know that he is going to do amazing things, and I will make sure nothing will get in his way. My husband nearly had me believing he was the devil with the way he was acting before he left. So silly. He should have accepted Harry for what he is, and we would be still together now as a family, which makes me a little angry at times, but it doesn't matter now. Nothing does. Only Harry. The problem is, poor Harry really misses his dad. He wanted to show him the truth, but unfortunately, my husband rudely left before he could finish, which is sad for him. He missed out on such an amazing opportunity. Lucky for him, not all is lost. Harry was in a forgiving mood, and we both agree it would be unfair if he was left out of all the fun, since he was such a big part of how it all began. So we paid a visit to his sister in hopes of finding out where he could have gone. She was a little bit naughty and tried to keep it a secret from us, but being the exceptional child that he is, Harry knew exactly what to do. Unfortunately, her mind wasn't ready to see the truth, and there was a little boo-boo. I guess some people are just too stuck in their ways. With her demons and angels talk, did she not understand that Harry is none of those things? He is so much, much more. I'm sorry if I'm rambling again. I'm just so proud of my perfect little boy Harry. It's so exciting. Okay, she told me my husband went to Lourdes, France to find himself. I told her not before my little boy finds him first. Lourdes. Can you believe that? I'll be honest with you. I never saw him as the religious type, especially after what my precious little boy showed him. I suppose it takes time for some people to see the truth, even if it is standing right in front of them. In the end, we decided it would be a good idea to pay him a visit. I knew he would never be expecting it. He will be so happy when he sees us. Harry is so excited he can barely keep it in. He really wants us to be a family once more, even if it is only for a short time. To try to relax him, I called a babysitter. I know you might think it's cruel, but is a lion cruel for killing and eating a gazelle, or a dolphin for eating a mackerel? No, because it is in their nature. These were the needs he had before I didn't understand. Once they are filled, he will act like the perfect little angel he is again. Besides, he doesn't try to hurt anyone. If they just let him in, they would be like me and live in constant bliss. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case this time, and he had another accident. I don't mind cleaning up the mess after him. It's nothing a little hard work and a bit of elbow grease can't fix. There is no point in crying over spilt milk, is there? Plus, it was all for a good cause, so I don't feel bad about it. Anyways, there are bigger fish to fry. Our flight leaves at noon tomorrow. Harry tells me when he is done with his dad, he will have a big surprise waiting for me. I can hardly wait. I just love surprises. I'm going to try my best to enjoy this. It will be our last holiday because when we get home, the real work will begin. I can't say any more, or I will ruin the surprise. And Harry won't like that, will he? My name is Vivian Tobias. If my paranoia is incorrect and people actually have noticed our disappearances, my girlfriend Mia Lawless and I have been reported missing for at least a couple of years now. I have nobody to blame but myself for getting her into this mess. A mess we've been trying to clean up since we got into it. I think we're 19 now. We were 16 when we got here. I'm not sure though. I can't be sure of anything anymore. Time might as well not even exist here. We're not the only people here. Well, there was a time where we weren't. Now that I think of it, maybe that's a good thing. There's less people suffering like this. Mia and I have been close since 8th grade, despite our clashing interests. Growing up, I was the ghost kid. You know the one. That one kid in your school with all the witchy rumors about them. Super quiet and always being followed by the popular kids pretending to be besties with them as a joke. Come to think of it, maybe that type of kid isn't as frequent as I led myself to believe to make myself feel better. Either way, I was that kid. I had a drastically different hair color every month, yet my outfit barely ever changed. My interest in the paranormal led me to go on ghost hunting trips wherever I caught the slightest whiff of an urban legend worth exploring. I could tell that Mia never believed any of the stories, but she enjoyed seeing me invested in something, so she usually kept quiet about the absurdity of some of the things I caught myself caught up in. Of course, the occasional snarky comment would slip out, but we'd just play it off as a joke. Partway through the first semester of our sophomore year, 5 students went missing. Christina, Xavier, and Vinny, a few of the popular students who'd regularly torment me, and 2 others, Dominic Tenchi, one of my few friends, and Sammy Schubert, one of the theater kids. It was a huge deal. School was shut down for a week for safety reasons, and the headlines of all assignments from that week were pushed ahead. I couldn't leave the house to visit Mia because of Mom's concerns for my safety. What with the sudden burst of missing persons cases. So Mia and I kept connected through Discord. We had our own theories. Mia speculated the popular kids heard of a dangerous place and decided to check it out, dragging the other students with them. And they were either killed or kidnapped. I personally wasn't sure what to make of it without turning it into something you'd find in a Fear Street book. When school opened back up, I couldn't help eavesdropping on any conversation I could make out. Everyone else had their own rumors too. Some of them similar to each other, some actually plausible, and some downright stupid. One kid thought Michael Myers got them. Like, he genuinely thought that. I failed to suppress a snort when I heard that one. One theory caught my attention, however. Realm of the Cursed. I kept hearing that name. All throughout the halls, the kids at my school had never believed in supernatural phenomena the way I did. But this was the going theory. Over the next few days, I picked up various details, but I wasn't making a lot of progress. Some said it was hell. Some said it was purgatory. Some said it's roamed by one cursed one. Some said it was an army. The versions of the stories that claim there to be one cursed one sometimes give it a different name. Zephyrus, Satan, Malak, Voxelani, and the Drej, Gerald, and even Sephiroth, for some reason. I was taking one step forward and 2 steps back with everything I gathered. I finally decided to man up and ask someone directly what they know. I asked my classmate Akira, one of Sammy's friends. There's a huge bridge that connects us to the next town over. He told me. Under that bridge is a tiny island, and on that island is a tear in reality. The story instantly became less believable, and I instantly became more intrigued. Akira continued. It wasn't always there, though. Decades ago, when it was first opened, something terrible emerged from it. A horribly disfigured beast, one whose form mixed perfectly with the night, ventured straight to the home of the man who brought it into existence. I scooted to the edge of my seat. Akira's eyes began trailing off to the side, his voice dramatic, like you'd expect from a theater kid. When it reached the man's street, the creature let out a roar loud enough to wake up everyone in the vicinity. People left their homes to investigate the noise, and the creature slaughtered every person that wasn't the one it was looking for. When it finally found the man cowering in his home, it lifted him up by the head and left for the bridge once more. Akira's gaze drifted back to mine. The creature hadn't even left the street when a cop opened fire on it. The creature was struck and its blood tainted the area, forever staining that road and extinguishing all plant life around it. The wounded creature used its pool of blood as a portal back to its realm, taking the man with it. The rift is still under the bridge, but it can only be accessed through a password. Nobody knows what it is because everyone who does know has already used it and been trapped there. Nobody's escaped, and everyone who's claimed to is full of shit. Akira's expression turned solemn. One thing is for sure, though, they said. If that's where those kids are, they aren't coming back. Maybe Akira just had a very good storytelling voice, but something about the story struck something within me. I spoke. What street was it again? Ulysses Avenue, Akira responded. You might not have seen it. It's a total dead zone. Nobody's dared to live there since that happened. The road is still stained with the blood of the cursed one. I couldn't fathom how I had never heard about this. Something like this, widely believed to be true with physical evidence, the only thing stopping us from proving its existence was the fact that nobody had the balls to do it. I had the balls, though. I had so many balls. I immediately jumped on the topic, doing as much research as I could. The resources I got were incredibly limited, since I lived in a tiny town with barely any internet presence. I was able to find something, however. It was on some sort of horror movie forum. The post was asking users to share their experiences with local urban legends. The few replies actually recounting physical experiences with the legends were often written off as silly stories. The reply that talked about the realm of the cursed was no different. The writer seemed to be speaking from within the realm. It's real, they wrote, but people have twisted the truth so hard that pretty much nothing about it is accurate anymore. I've seen people talking about living animal sacrifices to get in, a password, candles, all of this exorcist mumbo-jumbo, all BS. It's all meant to keep you from actually getting there. I mean, I see where they're coming from, but all they managed to do was slow me down. There's no password. You just gotta speak. Speak your devotion to the cursed and talk about how you wish to live in its world and all that. Everyone doubted the original poster. I won't lie. I did too. The poster's account has been inactive since 2009, and that was the only thing they ever posted. So, they were either a troll, or they faced the same fate that the missing kids might have faced. I got so caught up in researching this topic that I spoke with Mia less and less, and unsurprisingly, her concerns grew. A week later, we were hanging out at my house, and I made my final decision. I'm going, I announced out of nowhere. I saw Mia tense up. A few moments of silence passed. Vivian? She began. Please think about this. I looked up from the laptop in my lap. I have, I answered. I've been contemplating following through with this for weeks now. Mia inhaled sharply. I don't know, she continued. This is like your 60th ghost hunt, maybe. Maybe it's time to take a hint. My eyebrows lowered a little. This is the closest I've ever gotten to finding proof of something like this. Anything like this, Mia, I said. Mia stood up. And what if it is true? Her voice had a twinge of anger to it. What will you do then? Just get out? Viv, nobody's done that. You'll have walked right into certain death, and for what? I closed my laptop and looked at Mia. I just want to know. I want to be sure there's something out there. And if I back down now, all I've done in life will have been for nothing. I don't care what happens to me. Mia put her hands on mine. But I do, she said. I've already lost most of you to this ghost fanatic stuff you've got going on. You pay it more mind than you do the people in your own life. And if you're right and this place is real, I'll lose all of you. The intensity of Mia's expression faded a bit. I know this is your passion, and I can't tell you what not to be interested in. She shook my hands a little. But please, she said, please settle down. Something like this isn't worth gambling your life over, especially so soon in life. I love you, and I can't just let you do this to yourself. We stared at each other in silence for a long time. Was she right? Yes, absolutely. In every conceivable way. I should have listened to her. However, at the moment, my mind was set. Mia finally withdrew. Well, she murmured, if you're going, then I'm going with you. I blinked. What? I'm coming with you, she repeated. What? I repeated back. No, I'm not putting your life on the line too. Mia didn't miss a beat. Either I come with you, or I tell your mom what you're planning. What's got you believing these stories now? I retorted. Mia fell quiet for a few seconds. Because I think it's real, she finally answered. I was taken aback by that one. Mia never believed a thing I did. It took what felt like a minute for me to form a response. Is this a trick? Mia shook her head. I've lived here my whole life, Vivs. I've been down every street enough time to pick up a general vibe. Even before I heard of the legend, whenever I'd go down Ulysses Avenue, I'd feel hopeless, she said. And whenever I would reach the stain in the road, I'd feel something, some sort of premonition. Nothing ever happened, but that's what it felt like something had me in its crosshairs. It might have been my paranoia talking, but either way, I want nothing to do with that street. But if you're going, I am too. Like you said, it'd be nice to at least know I was right. And that was that. We'd be leaving the next day near midnight. First, however, I had a final day of school to look forward to. Mia and I agreed not to tell anyone what we were doing. Somebody figured it out, though. Must have been Mia who let it slip. "You're going? For real?" Akira's voice wasn't as hushed as we wished it would be. I couldn't blame them. "You need to promise not to tell anyone," Mia pleaded in a half-whisper. "We'll be alright." Akira brought his hands to his head. "You're gonna die, man. The school's gonna freak out. They're gonna think there's a serial killer on the loose or something." Mia put her finger near Akira's face in a shushing gesture. "You don't say a word," she said slowly. "It's not worth getting yourself into trouble over. We've never had this conversation." Akira bit their lip. "All right," they finally said, though I could see the guilt in their eyes. The day ended and Mia and I went our separate ways. We had our schedule in check. We both agreed to skate to our destination to save energy. While I used a scooter, Mia had chosen rollerblades as her form of transportation. Not very practical, but she'd always enjoyed it as a hobby. Mia had agreed to bring an inflatable raft and oars, so we didn't have to swim to the island. We both had location permissions turned off on our phones so our parents wouldn't be able to come get us if they got worried. And I left through the front door, taking care to lock it behind me so I wouldn't chicken out. It was a stupid idea. I know, but we were teenagers. I mean, we still are, but we were dumb teenagers. This was nice. The weather was breezy and pleasant. The sky wasn't as light polluted as you'd expect it to be, and the streets were comfortingly quiet. Just the two of us, marching on towards certain death. The atmosphere was so enjoyable, I almost forgot that detail. Soon enough, we came upon the massive bridge. I drifted to a halt while Mia kept moving until she was able to rest against one of the bridge's beams. Mia removed her skates and untied her hoodie from her waist. Well, she put on the hoodie. I noticed she was wearing some kind of tool belt. I asked her just what she had prepared. "Knives," she answered. "Lots of them." A belt full of knives. At least she had a bag with her to carry more important items. "Well," I said, "let's get going then." It took around 20 minutes to blow up the raft, which we cautiously carried down the steep hill towards the water. We rowed towards the island in silence, letting it properly beach itself before stepping off. "You got your speech ready?" Mia asked. "Oh, I had forgotten about that." Mia sighed. "Okay, just say the first thing that pops into your head," she suggested. Of all the days for me to actually be good at improv, it had to be today. "Realm of the Cursed," I began. "Give us refuge. Within your walls, we will be safe from the dangers of this world. Cursed one, take us under your wing and grant us the solace we beg of you." I squeezed my eyes shut in anticipation. I held my breath, I clenched my fists, and I waited. Nothing. I kept waiting and nothing continued to happen. I opened my eyes to see Mia had hers shut too. Eventually she gave up. "Well," she said, "guess that's it then." I sighed. This was a waste of time. I looked into Mia's eyes and saw she was having trouble keeping them open. I didn't blame her. It was super late. But then I noticed I was having trouble keeping my eyes open too. "What?" was the last word to leave my mouth before I blacked out. I awoke to a strange, pulsing feeling in my chest. Suddenly I shot up, a torrent of water shooting from my mouth, leaving me a coughing mess. My eyes stayed shut tight as I felt a hand touch my face. followed by 2 arms wrapping around me. "Jesus," Mia said in between deep breaths. "I thought I lost you." My eyes squinted open, and I saw the sun had risen. How long had I been out? Slowing my breath, I took a deep breath in. My inhale sharpened as a blast of pain stabbed into my chest. "Shit." Mia took the words out of my mouth. Mia must have cracked a couple of ribs. CPR does that. It would be hell to deal with, but at least I was alive. I took a moment to look around. Everything looked the same as usual, except more yellowed. This was new, but it hadn't been the weirdest weather I'd seen here. After doing a quick 360 around the island, I found both the raft and oars were completely gone. We weren't incredibly far from the shore, but it would be a grueling task to swim from one end to the other with broken ribs. I sighed. No other way out of this. I said to myself as I inched toward the water. I experimented with a few different strokes until finally settling on the backstroke, as it caused the least amount of pain. Mia had never learned to swim, so she just held onto my waist as I carried us both. I could tell she felt like a jerk for putting extra strain on my ribs, but we didn't really have many options. It wasn't an easy journey. I nearly passed out from exhaustion, but the pain kept me awake, so good for me. Eventually we made it to the shore and took a moment to catch our breath. "We should get home. Mom's probably terrified," Mia said. As we made it to the top of the hill, we discovered that my scooter and Mia's skates had disappeared. Unsurprising. This wasn't a particularly bad town, but we should have expected a couple bad apples to be looking for an easy heist. That, or somebody took them to some sort of lost and found type thing. Maybe we'd been reported missing. Guess we're walking. As we walked through the town, we didn't see a single soul. Nobody, and this was the most populated part of town. Had there been a bomb threat while we were out? I felt a pit grow in my stomach. Something was definitely off. Everything was painted over in a slight sepia tone. Not so intense that everything was the same color, but noticeable enough for the Walmart to appear green instead of blue. It looked like how Mexico is usually filmed in American movies. Wherever we were, I could tell this was not home. It may have been made up of the same shapes, but it was as if I was looking at someone wearing a loved one's face as a mask. The more details I took in, the more dread I could feel building up. The final nail in the coffin, the thing that really cemented the fact that I totally screwed up, was the shape. The shape I saw ducking behind a car. The massive, void black mass, and the one piercing white eye. The monster only I had seen. "Vivian!" A voice blared into my mind the moment I made eye contact. Its voice sounded, well, just about every adjective you could think of. It was every accent, every pitch, every gender, every tone, every emotion, everyone. I only managed to pick up 2 things about it. Despite its omnitonal nature, its voice felt predominantly, almost, motherly. Like I had shown up to a family reunion. It was happy to see me. Hell no. Shit. I repeated to myself as I ran as fast as my ribs would let me. I can't help but be thankful that this place matches my home to a T. Otherwise, I never would have been able to figure out my way around. I rounded every corner after corner until we made it to my street. Every house on the street looked the same as their real-world counterparts. All except mine. I can't even really use the word different to describe it. It was just gone. Like it wasn't there. Not even an empty field of grass in its place. When I got closer, it was as if my house had been swallowed into a bottomless pit. No doubt Mia's house was like this too. Was this the same for all the other missing kids too? I looked down the street, and I felt it. I grabbed Mia's wrist. We need to hide now. I dragged her to the home of the Amaris, our next-door neighbors. Their door was unlocked. Before stepping in, I glanced behind me down the street again. Whatever presence I felt, I couldn't see it. Was it hiding from us too? I didn't think about it a second longer. We rushed in. We looked around for a place to hide, eventually settling on the wardrobe. Creative, right? Shut up, we were in a hurry. There we sat in silence with our knees to our chests for what felt like hours. That feeling of dread never got any better. Finally, Mia broke the silence. Who? Her words were cut short by the sound of the front door slamming open. One thing about Mia you'd notice first upon meeting her is how she'd always have this general zen about her. There was nothing I knew of that could frighten Mia enough to let down her cool aura. That being said, you could imagine seeing the color drain from Mia's face in the dim light would make my nerves run frigid. The sound of something heavy shifting against the carpet caught my ear. I knew I shouldn't have looked, but against my better judgment, I moved in and peeked through the slits in the closet door. Even in the natural light, the creature was still black as night. It knew we were here. I watched as it lifted its malformed hand from the ground and tipped over a couch with minimal effort, taking a moment to examine the floor underneath. It as if we could have possibly hidden there. Maybe it wasn't very intelligent. I speculated that maybe the creature had poor eyesight. My theory was cemented as the creature had to come very close to just about every piece of furniture, taking a few beats to identify them. The wardrobe must have blended very well into the wall because not once did it flicker its eye towards us. The deafening silence had mostly been filling my ears since I got here. Well, this creature overrode that. It made its presence known through a constant ambient hum, like something of an oscillator. With our cover, I was able to make out some more details about the creature. Chunks and chunks of it seemed to have been taken out. I could see the bones in its bigger arms, biceps, and what was behind it? Something had ripped its lower jaw in half down the middle, making it look like the mandibles of an insect. From its various wounds, dried out veins stuck out in a zigzag pattern. These were the only real details I could discern, as all I had to go off of was the silhouette form it took. All we had to do was maintain dead silence as the creature searched the other rooms. I had one job. After about 30 minutes of searching the house, I heard the creature let out some sort of exasperated sigh as it dragged its oversized hand through the living room and towards the door. I waited until I heard the dragging noise switch from carpet to concrete. A sigh of relief is what would have left my body had my ribs still been intact. What instead came out was a jolt of pain, followed by a coughing fit and a tidal wave of agony. As I caught my breath and wiped a tear, I noticed Mia's face. Her eyes pierced my soul, wordlessly screaming at me for dooming us both. I heard the creature snicker under its breath. Great, I thought. It had a sense of humor. Mia was shaking in her boots. Her eyes were wide, but behind them I saw a kind of softness. Acceptance, I assumed. There likely wasn't much of a chance of us getting out of this. As the sound of the creature's massive hand dragging across the carpet grew closer and closer, Mia's expression shifted, hardened. Mia grew steely-eyed as she felt around her belt and unsheathed one of the hunting knives she had brought with her. It was partially caked in dirt, and the blade was somewhat jagged after what seemed to be years of use. The creature's ambient hum grew in volume until I swear I could feel it shaking the closet door slightly. I was frozen as a statue, forced to watch as Mia stood up, still slightly trembling. Her determined look quickly shifted to rage as the door finally swung open. I could see it was at least 3 heads taller than Mia, and Mia was among the tallest girls in our grade. Mia made her move immediately, lurching forward and plunging the knife deep into the creature's stomach. She did it with such force that the beast seemed to be pushed back a few feet from just the knife's hit. Her eyes shot to mine, and she opened up a hand. I took it, and we bolted around the creature as it clutched its abdomen, screeching in agony. I've grown accustomed to that noise, but the first time I heard it, it stayed with me for a long time. We sprinted as fast as we could for a block or two, finally stopping to hide behind a Volvo outside a massive house. I racked my brain for ideas on what to do. Mia tapped my shoulder with the back of her hand. "The school," she said. "Huh?" Mia's eyes had lit up with hope. "People talk about this place a lot, right? Maybe somebody has the way out written somewhere." I loosely crossed my arms. "I doubt it. If nobody got the way in right, how can we expect someone to get the way out right?" "You're forgetting," she said. "The only reason we heard about this place is that people managed to get here." The realization slowly started to come together in my mind like puzzle pieces. Sammy, Xavier, Vinny, Dom, Chris. One of them must have known. Wrote it down, maybe. It clicked. Everyone always has left their notebooks and folders at school, only using their bags to carry more personal belongings and books. They'd only take their notebooks home in the rare case a teacher assigns homework. Otherwise, they'd leave them in their lockers. If we could look through enough notebooks, maybe we could find a way out of here. We were about 60% of the way there when something caught my eye. We had ducked behind a tree when the creature passed us. I peeked out to make sure the coast was clear when I spotted something in the window of a house across from us. A head poking out from a window. A person looking down both sides of the street cautiously. I couldn't make out many details due to the black hood they were wearing. The person seemed to calm down, standing up and retreating out of my sight. Whoever this was, I could assume they were like us. I filled Mia in, and we agreed to investigate further. Maybe they could help us. Strength in numbers. We cautiously crossed the streets and tried the door. It opened. For a second, I was dumbstruck as to why someone would leave a door unlocked like this, but then I came to 2 realizations. 1, I hadn't even attempted to lock the door when we were hiding in that house earlier. 2, the door doesn't have a lock. The door itself was clearly aged, its blue paint stripping off and covered in cracks, but the doorknob looked like it had been replaced not but a day or 2 ago. It had no lock, and it was made from smooth marble. After jogging my memory, I realized this was the same doorknob that the Amari house had. Whatever reasoning this might have had, I didn't have time to linger on as we quietly entered the building. On the coffee table in the center of the living room was a stack of papers and a box of pencils. Hung around on the walls were various pencil drawings. Some of them depicted the creature, some characters from different animated shows, and one of them was a map of the town, spread out along numerous sheets of paper connected with masking tape. "Hello?" I called out in a hushed voice, hoarse from pain. No response. Whoever this was wanted nothing to do with us. I did my best to ensure we meant no harm. We're not here to hurt you." Mia joined in. "We're stuck here too." No response. I like your drawings," I added. Slowly we walked through the house, examining each room. The bedroom was empty, the kitchen was empty, the garage was empty, but the feeling of this person's presence persisted. We were just about to call it quits when I heard something fall over in a room we'd already checked. "Hello?" I called out once more. I cautiously approached the door when a figure jumped out from behind a dresser, pointing a short sword at me. I immediately threw my hands up and backed away. The person's face was obscured by the shadow of their hood and a black face mask bearing an Oni design. They breathed heavily, alternating between pointing the blade at me and Mia. They lowered the sword a little bit. "Holy shit." They finally spoke. "Vivian." The person relaxed, pulling down their hood to reveal a head of hair dyed bright pink. At one time, it went down to his shoulders, but he seemed to have sloppily cut it short. "Dominic," Mia said. Dominic was one of the 5 kids who went missing, starting this whole ordeal. He was one of the nerdier kids, getting straight A's in most of his classes. We were both part of the same party in the school's Dungeons and Dragons Club, where we'd stay at school for 3 extra hours every other Thursday. Mia began. "Do you know where the others are?" Dominic's expression hardened a little. He shook his head, but the guilt I saw in his eyes said otherwise. "I'm so sorry," I said. After a beat of silence, Dom's eyes widened. His guilt shifted slightly into fear as he asked us just what the hell we were doing here. As we told him the whole story, his breathing steadied. "If you don't mind," I began. "How did you get here?" He sighed. "Well, you might not like to hear this, but I became friends with those kids. It started with them taking jabs at me, of course, but I played along, and, well, I guess we just kinda got along. I think their attitudes rubbed off a little on me. I was the one who gave the idea to come here in the first place, and I was the one whose idea it was to drag Sammy along." I blinked a few times at that sentence. Behind me, Mia spoke. "You knew?" Dom laughed. "You'd like to think that, wouldn't you? No, I didn't know squat. I thought this would just be an easy laugh. Who doesn't love a good scare, you know? I pretended to know the password, and I guess I got it right. I took shelter in this house about a week ago, scavenging food from other houses, drawing whatever's in my head to keep me sane, and hiding whenever I sensed that thing drawing near. As of now, it hasn't even glanced in my direction. This place belongs to it. Everything's the same, but doorknobs have been replaced. No guns, and from what I can tell, food doesn't expire. This thing doesn't want us to die from natural causes. It wants us all to itself. I'm probably not getting out of here anytime soon, but I'll be damned if I let that thing get what it wants." "Well, you might not be planning to leave," Mia said, putting her hand around my wrist. "But we are." As Mia walked me to the door, Dominic followed. "There's nothing for you out there," he said. "Without anything to defend yourself, that thing's gonna tear you to shreds." We stayed silent. "How do you plan on getting out?" Dom added. "We'll find a way," I told him over my shoulder. "We need to." And that was that. Dominic was, albeit reluctantly, aboard, and we had our plan. We just needed to figure out how to get the lockers open. We crossed through the town, taking care to be hard to spot whenever possible. One of the downsides of being out in the daytime is that you're naturally easy to make out in contrast with the yellow grass. An upside is that it's easier to see the thing. So, win-win, I guess. When we finally made it to the school, the entrance seemed to tower over me, even though it wasn't really all that tall. This would be the place I'd be risking my life to enter week after week, and I knew that. Despite its foreboding nature, a sense of calm washed over me. A sense of calm that I could only really feel at school. Yeah, weird, right? I'll spare you a lot of the details, but my dad wasn't the greatest person. In fact, he was so not great that when I was 11 and he died in a drunk driving accident, neither my mom's nor my dad's side of the family sympathized with him. He really screwed me up for a while, and something about school in general, and the sanctuary from my dad it gave me, is why it's been in a special place in my heart for so long. I assume Mia saw me relax my posture as she put a hand on my shoulder. She pulled a couple knives from her belt. 6 left. She handed me a knife and flipped hers around to a stabbing position. Dominic seemed caught off guard. You brought how many knives? Mia smiled. What? Too many? Only 9. Rookie numbers. I answered as I put my hand on the door. Even with how obvious this place's mimicry of the school was, the calm I felt was just the same as it would have been had I entered the original building. The fluorescent lights were on, making their signature quiet buzz. I was still a little on edge because of the whole thing with us being hunted by Big Hand McGee, but other than that, I felt safer than I'd felt before. Our first stop was the office. We'd most likely find the locker combinations there. The building was designed like a maze, but our familiarity with it saw us through. I'd say we were halfway there when the lights above us began to flicker, and with it those feelings of safety I described in such detail flickered too. The tone that the creature constantly emanated began to fill my ears. If you've been following, that isn't a good thing. It wasn't long before I saw it round a corner and look me in the eyes. I was frozen in my tracks. Even as Dominic pulled on my arm and Mia begged me to run, all I could do was look at this thing as it trudged toward me, shutting off every light it passed underneath. Eventually a sharp slap to the face broke me out of my trance and we bolted. This guy doesn't wait around, Viv, Dominic told me. You want to make it out of this place or not? Eventually, we rounded a corner and came to the door of the office. The two of us exchanged a brief look of confidence as Mia opened the unlocked door. The two of us. Shit, Tom, I blurted out. Wherever Dominic was, it wasn't here. You get him, Mia told me. I'll get the locker combos and we're out. We'll come back tomorrow. As I ran down the halls, my eyes scanning frantically for Dom, I started hearing screams emanate from all around me. I tried taking my mind off of it, but it wasn't hard to discern that these screams must have belonged to the numerous lives that were lost in this purgatory. I picked up my speed a little, not wanting my voice to become one among those millions. And then, a yell. Not a persistent shriek of torment like the ones surrounding me, but a sharp, sudden, startled yelp. It was right in front of me, and as I strained my eyes to see what it was, I realized that the halls were filled with some kind of black fog, making it hard to see past 20 feet in front of me. As I connected the dots in my head, it clicked when I saw a smudge of pink on the floor in the mist in front of me. Dominic. Dominic was on his knees facing toward me, away from something else. He winced as he held on to his left hand, blood oozing from it. The sword he had carried lay a few feet away, stained crudely. I turned my head up and, almost indistinguishable from the fog, the thing was there. It advanced towards Dominic like a slasher villain, slowly, coldly, imposing, insidious. It was relishing in Dominic's pain. Have you ever had one of those dreams where you try to run, but you can barely move an inch? That's sort of what was happening to me. I was completely hopeless to watch as Dominic's eyes caught mine. Viv? And were obscured by the thing engulfing his head with its massive hand, effortlessly lifting him into the air. I was running at full speed. I saw the floor moving under me, but it seemed to slow down the closer it got to the creature. Even as tears streamed by me and the walls blurred with speed, I wasn't getting any closer, even as I felt the wind fly past my face. It was toying with me. My mind was being assaulted from all angles. My ears were flooded with a torrent of screams. The ones surrounding me, the muffled cries of Dominic, and my own. My nose started picking up a tinge of metal and the gunpowdery smell that had filled the halls not 10 seconds ago. I saw red start to leak down Dominic's shirt as his body grew limp. It was too much for me to handle. I still regret what I did next, but looking back, I knew it was my only option. Squeezing my eyes shut, I hurled my knife at the horrific scene with every ounce of strength in me, drifted to a 180, and started bolting the other way to tell Mia to get the hell out of here. A more mangled variant of the signature screech I had first heard in the Amari house caught my attention, and I looked over my shoulder to see the creature clutching its neck. I always was a good throw. My short burst of self-confidence was quickly snuffed out by the blood-spattered mess that used to be one of my closest friends entering my focus. Tearing my eyes away from the scene, my mind kicked back into gear, and my speed began to pick up. This time, I was actually getting somewhere. After making it back to the office, I saw Mia stuffing a paper-filled binder into her bag. "Viv, where's..." Without a word, I grabbed Mia's wrist and bashed into the closest window at full force, nearly destroying my shoulder in the process. Shards of glass rained upon us as we tumbled out of the building. As we sprinted, Mia must have noticed my tears and knew. I'd let him die. All I did was watch until it was too late. At least, that's what I told myself for a while. We weaved through the streets and made for the Amari house, where we would stay while I attempted to recover from my injuries. Surprisingly enough, we found the pantries lined with canned food that wouldn't expire for a while. It occurred to me that maybe we could ransack some houses for seeds to plant, which is just what we did. I'm not surprised the curse provides us with these tools. It wants our blood to be on its hands only. We tried our best to give Dominic a proper memorial. This is what we've been doing for the past couple of years. Every few days, we risk our lives to loot a few lockers for notebooks to flip through, in hopes of finding any key to leaving this place. We aren't close to hitting them all, but we aren't giving up just yet. We fortified the Amari house and have our methods of defense down. We haven't killed the thing just yet, but it seems like all it needs is a good sharp poke and it'll back off for a bit. The harvest is bountiful, and the reinforcements are solid. It's safe to say we have a bit of time to find our way out of here. Recently, I've managed to find an internet signal, albeit very poor, on the bridge just above the rift we entered through. Isn't that convenient? I hadn't thought my phone would do so much use here, but hey, here we are, and here I am posting my story here like anyone will believe it. You know what? I think it's time to confess. I have made the choice to forego all location-based details because Mia and I do not want to be found. My name is not Vivian Tobias. Her name is not Mia Lawless. His name was not Dominic Tenchi. I see now why people tried to change the details. I came up with every name in this post at the drop of a hat. Several details were fabricated. I won't say what I made up, but just know that I did all of it on purpose. To make it harder to get here. To throw people off. To keep people safe. All of the pain I've gone through, and everything I saw while in this hell through, all of it was real. If you don't believe this story, trust me, that's fine by me. Hell, I don't want people to believe it, if it keeps them safe. Let this story serve as a warning. If you choose to look further into this, even go as far as to come here yourself, I understand that I cannot stop you. The most I can do is beg you not to. We're trying to find our way out, but if we do, we're staying quiet about this. And we don't trust you to do the same. Please don't try to find us. It's for the best. When I was 6 years of age, all of my father's cows fell dead to a disease I can only remember as the eyeball bursting evil. For that is what I heard my mother refer to it as on the phone during a sobbing call with my grandmother. The only thing I can recall from the mist that are my childhood memories. My parents were both frantic about keeping me from seeing the aftermath of the plague, so I never did. My only glimpse being the last sight I had of the cattle from my childhood farm as the horses dragged away with sore, cold limbs. Their peaceful silhouettes littered on the viridian field, bloated and rotting, resting under a robin egg blue sky, lifeless and, by consequence, worryless. A couple of years down the line, I would begin to envy them. I was but a mere infant then, when we lived at the farm, but despite the unripeness of my young brain, it allowed me to remember things my little sister never had the chance to. I remembered the brick roads and the scent of the bakery's pastries hand in hand with the organic spore of an afternoon downpour. The walls of our house, the hardwood floors, and the oil painting of a queen whose sclerae were white with lead and crown, yellow with chromium that hung over the fireplace. I remembered a vinyl disc in Polish that my dad used to love, and how I could hear it, muffled by the shut door of my room, when he stayed home from work on Saturday evenings. And I remembered the summer dress wearing stuffed bear and its tiny hat, who I had to leave behind, of whose fate I cried at the thought of. I believed it, too, would fall victim to the eyeball-bursting evil, not knowing yet its eyeballs were nothing but glass marbles, and as evil can be, it cannot mess with those who aren't cursed with a beating heart, regardless of fragility. And I think I would have forgotten all those details from my short life at the farm if it weren't for the ghost that seemed to haunt me the moment I stepped foot on the haunted town, and which made me hate its very roots, clinging and cherishing any and all moments I could recall from before it. I had heard it countless of times. Gratitude. When my father's livelihood perished alongside 8 cows, my grandmother offered us her home as a temporary hostel, which meant leaving the country my parents had inhabited for longer than the existence of many of the larger cities that had, seemingly, sprouted out of the ground in the last decade, coughing sulfur, smoke, and soot, piercing kids' lungs. My mother met my father when they were both in college, her for nursing, him for law, although they both wished to be painters. He always said her accent was one of the many things that charmed him as a young man, and my mother? Well, she never really talked about my father, usually stoic and solemn throughout their 30 years of marriage. As a child, I began to resent her portrait stillness. Soon, I would come to miss it. We moved countries and across Europe during 3 grueling days on a crying, coughing train. It could have been the piercing cold that seeped in from under every door of the harrowing old house, but I was not able to shut an eyes for the blue entirety of the very first night, unable to peel away my pupils from the window beside my stiff bed, hearing the distant sound of my mother's habit of talking in her sleep, and watching the moon crawl like an ice beetle through the English violet sky, plunging with all the time to spare and none at all, behind the hills that covered the horizon, which shone, carpeted with white snow, under the light of a newly born sun. The glass pane quickly lightened in tone, shining clarity over the landscape around me, its tall, elegantly dressed pines, rogue, pointy bushes, and frozen lakes. A sight worth sighing for if it weren't for the sinking hole in the depths of my guts. I got enrolled into the local school not long after. My mother wished to find another Christian institution like the one before, but for obvious reasons she couldn't, or wouldn't, comprehend that wasn't possible. People from my grandma's town held beliefs and ideals that my mother did not understand, and so she feared them, and loathed waving me away every time I left the house, choked by a tie and a polyester sweater. I could see it in her eyes. She wished for nothing more than to grab my wrist, pull me back into the living room, and slam a Bible on the old wooden table for me to read until I bled the blood that fell from Jesus' palms through my eyes. And I found a deeply unknown sense of selfish satisfaction from watching her grieve in silence at the thought of the poisoning of my mind through academics, far from the hands of her God. But alas, I am not to talk about my troubling relationship with religion, and the one who may, or may not, have built everything and everything beyond. For my hand would probably cramp and fall dead as a victim of necrosis, like a forgotten hiker on top of a mountain veiled by snow. That is not the story I wish to narrate this time. I came back from school one particularly gray day to the sound of mutters and hushing getting louder and louder as I approached my grandma's house. I was left outside, surrounded by curious neighbors with big eyes and sharp tongues. My mom had jammed the handle of a spoon from my grandma's silver cutlery into her ear, and was being transported to the hospital. I could hear the wails of an old woman from inside the house, and, not long after, my grandmother stumbled out, held by my father, both speaking to each other in soft words as if to make the other's grief lighter. I knew it all to be pretense, though. They worried not about my mother, but about the way an act of such barbarity towards her own self had shaken their lives. How dare she shatter their precious window of normalcy? They hated what my mother had done to them by doing it to herself, and that she did was destroy herself with a spoon and stain the carpet with blood. A stain that was probably not going to come out anytime soon, and it would cause it to be replaced. Good, because the carpets were very old. Anyways, and they made the place smell like mothballs, and the ghost of a cat that died a while ago. Once my mother was able to speak without crying her insides out, she was questioned to death, but she had only one answer. I could not keep hearing the words of those demons. It was just too much for me. An answer that did not satisfy my grandmother or father, as they still held on to their sense of happiness and comfort by their cuticles and hoped for I slipped and accidentally jammed 10 centimeters of silver into my skull. My mother lost hearing in the victim ear, but was, otherwise, clear to come back. But she wasn't, was she? She refused to leave the hospital bed and screamed at the sheer thought of glancing into my grandmother's house. Eventually, they managed to convince her to come back home by promising one thing. Before she came back, they were going to have a priest over to exorcise the house. I had never seen a real exorcism before, and had only heard gruesome and dramatic tales that I would not have believed if I had heard them at any age other than 7, and in the process of being scared by older girls who read gothic novels. It was not like I was excited, but the thought of it did make me shift in my seat as I completed my homework, paying it less than half mind. The priest arrived around noon, the only Christian priest in town and those nearing it, and he had to ride a screeching train for 4 hours. I could see it in his eyes. He felt something as he crossed the doorframe and found himself standing in our living room, sending me, sat at the table, a quick glance of nervousness. I wondered if it was really an evil energy clashing with his God-chosen gift, or if it was just a visceral reaction to the blood stain the size of a sleeping, big dog ingrained in the ugly, half-taken-out carpet. He saluted me, and I saluted back, asking whether, if he could, feel anything. He answered back with a question, an evasion tactic I often saw with my father. Is there anything I should be feeling? And so, I said that I didn't know, but it must be strong enough to make you want to stuff a spoon inside your ear. My dad and grandmother came out of their rooms not long after that, and they greeted the pastor with joy, which I knew was fake from both of them, albeit for different reasons. After pointless chatter of the journey, and the weather during the journey, the pastor started the ritual. I was not sure of what I was expecting, but a conversation was definitely not it. The pastor drizzled us with holy water and spoke to the walls, the ceiling, the furniture, and the blood-stained carpet, asking for any evil forces that went against the word of God to leave the premises at once, for they were not welcome there, or something of sorts, demanding, in the name of Jesus, their quickest evacuation. I watched him closely, imagining myself in his place, and could not help but feel the slight ache of second-hand embarrassment. Nevertheless, he poured his heart and soul out about his God to the invisible, intangible, insensible entities that may or may not have been there, and afterwards, he left, sore-throated but highly paid. Nothing had happened except that, now, a golden cross hung from one of our walls. Our house was blessed by a screaming session from a middle-aged man, and an uncomfortable meal of shaken silence afterwards. But that seemed to satisfy my mother, as, the very next day, she was back, and she greeted me after school with the jolliest of moods, radiant as ever, high on placebos and faith. Yet, that wasn't it, now was it? It never is when it comes to the spiritual and the beyond the body. That was not near the end, but perhaps the beginning of it. I had never felt welcomed in my grandma's house. Not because of her, of course, as she was as kind and understanding as an old lady could be after receiving one of her children back home, accompanied by the husband she never really got to like, and their 2 pale kids, but by something else I could never really describe with words other than the sound of creaking doors and the flashing, yellow light of flickering light bulbs over my head as I ate breakfast in the morning. The sky outside a monotonous iron gray, something intangible and, at the same time, larger than life. I tried to pay it as little mind as I could and decided to think I was just homesick for the country we left behind. No one else seemed to feel the way I felt. My dad and sister had acclimated well to the new settings. Her, quickly surrounding herself with new friends, and him, disappearing to work every day, just as he did before. My mother was not as sound as them, but, yet again, she was my mother, so everyone thought she was okay, considering. The spoon incident seemed to disturb this peace they had crafted for themselves, and so they were more than excited to leave it behind and welcome her back home with smiles and a blind eye for the past. It all seemed to work for the first couple of days, and I saw my mother smiling around the house until she stopped once more. I could feel it in the dense green air as I came back from school and found her sitting in the living room, eyes glued to a novel, yet not reading at all. The soft music of the phonograph, loud enough to be heard even from the insides of my room as I closed the door. the harrowing howl of a dying wolf. I was never one to question things, but my sister was. I heard her fight with my father about it on multiple occasions. Accusations, demands, cries, and reprimands, and every time she left his room with tears in her eyes and sheltered away the rest of the day, barricaded behind a closed door. I often wondered what was it that she expected him to say. What could possibly fix the slimming waist and Bible-holding hands of my half-dead mother, as the walls of this very house closed around her neck? It surely was not my father's dark eye-bags, or his quick tongue when it came to bourbon. But I never mustered the courage to ask. Just how I never mustered the courage to approach my mother and cry. Hold her like she once held me when I was small and she was bright. Beg her to come back. Regrets aside, I mentioned before not having a close relationship with religion. Something I think my mother always resented me for, at least a bit. Yet there is more than one reason to why I could declare myself agnostic, although a superstitious one. I had never been the smartest, granted, not the most hard-working either, so the ways the world worked were still mysteries to me, and my knowledge of science relied greatly on trusting the brighter minds, believing what intelligent people said after decades of research instead of an old book and old people reading old passages. But, and perhaps most importantly of all, the series of events that followed the exorcism of my grandmother's house, which I may never forget or even begin to comprehend, no matter how hard I try. Everything could be said to be the most misfortunate, coincidental series of events to ever damn a poor soul. It could all be explained by calling me the unluckiest bastard to ever live, which at the end of the day, someone has to claim that title, right? But still, it is hard to not think that someone, or something, was playing me a nasty one, a deity's dark sense of humor. My grandma had a heart attack in the winter, perishing under the moonlight that came through her bedroom window, and cold and stiff by morning, the house smelling of dew, silence, and algor mortis. My mother wept in a way that could have split the earth in two, cries of forerunner pain even more intense than when she obliterated her own eardrum. A doctor came, although she was already the color of uncooked dough, and 3 days later, we buried her in a walnut casket under the cold morning rain, and had boiled eggs for breakfast at 10, which I later heard my sister vomit and wash away. And although they say there's calm after the storm, the tempest for the House of Whispers never ceased. For only a week after my grandma's heart stopped in her pale chest, my mother shoved yet another spoon into her healthy ear, and my father screamed himself breathless as they took her away. My now deaf mother, upon awakening, refused to go back to my dead grandmother's house, and had to be, well, dragged back. When the medical bills were mounting high, launching herself into the dying, yellow garden, desperately and sleeping the evening away in a fetal position, her skin seemingly burning, if ever, between its four walls. I wondered what it could be like to lay with not a sound disturbing your slumber. How similar that must have been to being dead. Nevertheless, my father resented her greatly, saying it out loud to my sister, and crying about how she thought of no one but herself. It only made our lives harder and harder. My sister did not take this lightly, of course, and the screaming match filled the hallways without a rest every time I entered the house. Glancing at my mother in the patio, who was growing dirtier and sicker by the hour as she refused to come back inside, and thinking that she could not hear any of it. She's going to take herself out with pneumonia out there. The woman is insane. My father's prophetic words bounced around the hallways, and sure enough, his poisonous spit became a whisper of air and a corporeal realization. and my mother never saw the morning sun again. Although it wasn't pneumonia, for pneumonia does not leave a corpse with 32 stab wounds to the chest and a sock stuffed into its mouth. I found it weirdly funny to think about last month, for I would never have guessed that in less than 30 days, I would be sitting in the middle of a station with the shivering body of my sister beside me, getting a couple hours of sleep drenched with anxious nightmares of dead grandmothers, murdered mothers, and murderous fathers. Hard to not think that someone or something was playing me a nasty one, a deity's dark sense of humor. We were briefly taken to our grandmother's house to pack away belongings and leave for foster care. The blood stain on the never-replaced carpet reminding me of better times. Folding my clothes from the closet and into my suitcase, I couldn't help but stare at the insides of my half-empty room. Even though everybody was gone, I could still feel it. I now realized it was not my grandmother, it was not my father, and it even was not my mother. The feeling of acid unwelcoming still lingered in the air like the faint smell of manure in a field of flowers covered with dead cows with bleeding eyes. And then I finally saw it. I turned to the tall mirror next to my bed and caught a glimpse of a figure that was far from mine. And when it saw I was able to catch it, it froze, giving up on trying to sneak. It looked like a woman, although the crudest version of one. Its eyes were the size of limes and its smile was like that of a sharp-toothed bat. Its skin was fairer than fair, so it almost camouflaged with the white of the walls, and its ears were long and pointed backwards. It was taller than me, naked and macillent, and a curtain of long hair covered most of its back and arms down to its knees. The moment I laid eyes on the creature's grin, I knew it had to be the cause of all my sorrow, and malice never seen hid in its large black pupils. I had to ask, why? What had I done? How did I wrong it so terribly as to warrant the walls of our universe being taken down with a wicked grasp and a merciless laugh? It looked at me for long, and then vanished into a cloud of fruit flies, leaving something behind in the different dimension that was the mirror, the golden cross that hung from our wall, now broken into 3 pieces. So I understood, and I finished packing my bags, for heresy is a wavering sin, dependent of whose hands your fate happens to fall in. I know most people are going to think I just had a bad dream, but this experience was 100% real, and it still haunts me to this day. It was midsummer and I had just finished my junior year of high school, and now that I was 18, I moved back in with my dad and started working part-time to help with bills. Since it was July, I hadn't yet gone back to school, and I had taken a few days off from work to relax and spend some time with the family. My dad had gone up north fishing for a few days, so I had the house to myself for the weekend. After a day full of lounging around and gaming, I decided to call it a night and plopped myself onto my bed before knocking out completely. I finally woke back up sometime later, and unsure of the time, I glanced over at my digital alarm clock. 3:04 a.m. it read. My room was dark and quiet, with the only light source being the alarm clock. Not sure as to why I had awoken at such an odd hour. I sat up in bed and rubbed the sleep out of my eyes, wanting to get a better view of my surroundings. I searched for my phone and clicked on the flashlight app. Once the room was partially illuminated, I saw something that sent a chill down my spine. My bedroom door was open. I always close my door when I go to bed. So, I know I wasn't the one who left it open, and my dad wasn't home at the time either. Not sure of how it happened. I crawled out of bed to close it, and as I reached my hand for the doorknob, I was instantly hit with a wave of terror. My skin started to crawl, my stomach was in a knot, my throat tightened up, and my heart started racing. Every fiber of my being was telling me that I wasn't alone, that something was out there, and that touching my door was a death sentence. I tried to peer out into the living room, but it was pitch black and I saw nothing. Then I turned my ear to listen for any sounds, but heard nothing. Whatever lurked out there could be neither seen nor heard, and it only served to intensify my already massive feeling of dread. So, following my gut feeling, I slowly sauntered back to my bed, crawled under the covers, and shut my eyes tight. I laid there for what felt like an eternity, afraid of whatever that thing was, wondering if it was going to come for me, or if it was waiting for me to come out. Before long, I drifted back to sleep. I awoke the following morning to discover my bedroom door properly shut again. My dad got home from his fishing trip sometime that afternoon, and I asked him if he'd seen anything strange outside the house. He said that he hadn't, but then he asked me a question that still echoes in my mind to this day. Why'd you leave the front door unlocked?